Hello, everybody. This is Anna Myers, and I'm here with my partner, Omar Khan. And we are going to walk you through the Weatherly Walk underwriting model, which Omar Khan is a brilliant underwriter, and we're so happy to have him on our team always. And this is his
Anna,
model.
you're making me blush now. Come on.
This is his model, so I want to give credit where credit's due. It's a fantastic model. I appreciate all the effort that he's put into it. And I'm gonna have Omar walk you through it, and I'll jump in and ask a few questions to elaborate on some details. So take it away, Omar.
Cool, Anna. I'm going to stop blushing now. So basically, welcome to the Weatherly Walk Apartments underwriting walkthrough. So before I go ahead, we're obviously going to take a deep dive. I just kind of wanted to give you guys an idea of how we're looking to conduct this. What I'm looking to see is not just show you the returns, which is really the nice stuff, but also kind of show you how we came up with the numbers. Because I feel a lot of times that is more important than the end result. The process is
Correct.
very important. And if you don't really understand the process, then the end result doesn't even matter, to be very
Right.
honest with you, right? So in this particular case, this is Weatherly Walk. Y'all already know this. It's in Fayetteville, Georgia. No surprises there. The purchase price is $23.85 million for a 1988 built asset. Now, the big thing I wanted to emphasize here is Fayetteville is one of the strongest growth submarkets in the Atlanta MSA and also one of the most affluent. So 70K plus median income. That kind of sets the stage for a lot of the value add process we're going to do and some of the rent upsides you're going to see, and that puts pictures into the entire thing into context essentially. So current occupancy right now is 92.3%. To give you some context, it's gone up to 94%. We can get into details on the webinar, but just to let you know, it's always been above 90%. This is a very supply constrained market where there's just more demand and less supply, right?
Yeah, that's right. And we are planning on taking advantage of our mega marketing and mega leasing for this property. So we are projecting, not in this underwriting, but as a team, we are projecting a little bit higher occupancy because of our secret sauce happening in the background. But notice that we didn't, bake that in.
Yep. And okay, so the ones below this, these are more used for renovation percentages. I can go into the details later. I don't want to bog you down with this right now because I want to talk more operational and we can talk CapEx. So specifically, we're expecting a renovation time frame is going to take roughly about 18 months with a 16-month hold, which is essentially 5 years. Now, if you go down to the sources and uses, before I go down, I actually wanted to talk about the debt over here. So
Hmm.
this is going to be a floating rate debt, roughly 4.8%, which is really accounts to about 2.8% spread over the 30-day LIBOR at 80% leverage, which is that's the quotes we're getting, and a 1.3 million capex budget, excuse me, which is basically going to be financed as most bridge loans are through the lender capex draw process. Now, specifically,
Yes, and so just to bring out that you called it originally a floating loan, and then you just mentioned many people know this as a bridge loan,
oh yeah,
as opposed to a fixed debt of agency. And Omar, why did we determine that a bridge loan was a better debt model for us for this project as opposed to going with agency long-term fixed rate
well,
debt?
number one, the issue is, look, if you're gonna, like most syndicators, by the way, regardless of what some syndicator on a podcast ever tells you, nobody's holding on to these deals for 5 or 7 or 10 years. The whole point of the value add process, the forced appreciation, is smart operators like ourselves, like ProCapitus and experienced people are going to go in. They're going to go in very well liquidated, with lots of capex money, and they're going to force appreciation. But once the appreciation has been forced, the bulk of the money has been made, which
Yep.
usually takes between 1.5, 2 years. After that, all you're really doing is just clipping a coupon. And that is not the best and highest usage of your money for a value add project. So therefore, if you get an agency debt, what you'll say, everybody says, I got a low rate agency debt. But we all know there is no free lunch in life. So what happens is if you get an agency debt and around the 2, 3, 4 year, 5 year mark, you decide to go sell the product, sell the thing. Well, you know what happens? You
Yeah,
get crushed on the prepayment penalties.
that's right.
The reason why you get crushed on the prepayment penalties is because there's no free lunch in life. And if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That's why.
So, Armar, are you concerned, if this is a floating loan, so are you concerned with interest rates that they're going to go back up?
Well, first of all, I'm always concerned about that. Number one,
And
that's short answer.
how are we addressing that?
Yeah, the long answer to that I was coming to is we're going to purchase an interest rate cap, which basically sets the ceiling above which if interest rates rise, we're going to get compensated for the interest rates rising. So that's how we mitigate our interest rate risk exposure. By the
Is it
way,
expensive to buy one of these? What does
no,
that
it's going to
cost?
cost us $15,000 to $20,000.
Which is ridiculously cheap, right? Compared to what it used to cost 5 years ago, even 3 years
Yeah,
ago, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's laughable how cheap it is compared to
the size of the
two and a
project
half years
even,
ago.
or
Yes,
even the size of the project, right? Look,
yes.
if you're in a 23.85, $24 million project, $15,000 is a drop in the bucket. So
Especially to get that cap rate lock going.
not just to get that going, but to have peace of mind. I mean, because at the end
Yeah,
of the day, there's no substitute to peace of mind,
that's right.
right? So that's kind of what it is. I want to go into sources and uses, but I want to go to it slightly around the end because then you'll have all the context of what's going on.
Sounds
Uh,
good.
as you can see, we have not, or rather, I have not included any refinance proceeds over here. The reason why I
Got
have
it.
refinances because I don't have a crystal ball. And anybody I think who does that, you should basically run away from that person because they're essentially just playing with numbers now, right? They're just trying to play with numbers to make themselves look like a genius. And we all know how that story ends, right? So basically, as we walk down, you'll see, well, I haven't put anything for rubs. Now, the reason why we haven't put anything for rubs in this particular case, this is a good thing. Excuse me, excuse me for us is because the issue is all of the units are individually metered. So
Awesome.
what doesn't happen is that we get charged, say, $100, we bill back $70, but we're still on the hook for $30. What happens is the tenant gets billed for $100, they pay $100, we don't take a hit on that.
Awesome. We love that.
And by the way, that's a feature of all these nicer, newer properties, better
That's right.
quality product. That's what it is. That's why they're operationally way easier to run. And that's kind of the big attractive feature here, right? Now, in terms of additional income, as we said, this is a very affluent submarket, $70,000 plus median income, plus all the comps around this property have amenities like washer and dryers, valet trash, pest control. So you know what we're going to do? Even though washer and dryer units connections are available in all the units, we've only accounted out 194, only 107 units. We're at least underwriting two. Now, in reality, what we're probably going to do is we're going to push and try to put as many washer and dryer units as possible because look, the more of these we put in, the better our numbers look. But we're being conservative. We're only assuming 107 out of 194 units, and valet trash and pest control is going to be implemented across the board on all of the units. Now, as you can see over here, when you get income, there are costs associated with that income. So on the valet trash side, $25 is typically what is the market rate with a $10 cost associated with implementing this amenity. In washer and dryers, there's a $50 roughly fee of actually more like $55 you can charge, and you pay roughly about the costs incurred in doing that are something about $15 to $20. For pest control, typically the market rate is $7 to $9 or $10, and the cost incurred in doing this is about $1 to $2. We've just put in $2 over there. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out here is that unlike a lot of other people who somehow magically believe or feel they can switch on a button, they just flick on a button and things just magically start happening, that's not really the case. What we've done in my particular case is that I say, look, after we take over, we're going to bring these revenues and costs associated with it slowly over for the first 3 months. It's going to start 3 months, and it's going to take an additional 12 months on top of that, so a total time period of 15 months before we get to majority. So what this means is if I'm saying it's $11,155 over here, it's going to take 15 months to get me to that. Because as we all know, you don't just flick on a switch. These things are a slow burn. They take time.
Yeah, you got
But
to
if
do it
you,
on lease turn in Georgia, correct?
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Not all markets are like that, but Georgia is like that. So we can only implement these changes to their lease when their lease comes up for renewal or when a new tenant is moving in. So that's an important thing to know about Lafayette County in Georgia.
Yep. And the other deal also is that we're just being conservative because we all realize we don't have a magic wand, and
Yeah.
people aren't going to do everything I say, unfortunately, so far. So you're just being conservative. Now, coming to the rent roll, basically you can see that what's happening right now is that all of these units are unrenovated, and they're getting about $1,000 or $1.01 per square foot. In our particular case, the market is actually the comps of a similar vintage are going for at least $1,300 to $1,400 in place right now.
Wow.
A big reason for that, look, yeah, wow, indeed, because I said wow the first time I saw this. A big reason for that, by the way, is because the surrounding properties have already gone through a very major value add process. So it's no wonder they're getting a lot of rents because they've actually put a lot of money into their property. Whereas this property, whereas it doesn't have a lot of deferred maintenance because the current owner is a long-term 20, 25, 30-year long owner. They've done a fantastic job in maintaining the property, taking fantastic care of the property, but they just haven't taken it and just matched what the comps are offering. That's why they're
And do you mean on the interior, or are we talking about amenities? So we're talking about the interior of the units. The surrounding comps are at a different level of renovation.
Yes, but the exteriors, to be honest with you, a lot of these things are interrelated, right? So it's not
Yeah.
just the interiors, the exteriors as well. Look, if you see the pictures for this property, you'll see it's very lush, great trees, all of
Yeah,
that stuff.
yeah, it looks nice. And so so tell me what are you suggesting on the amenities for the outside? You think there's a lot of work to be done there as well?
Yep. So first of all, enhance landscaping, right? Because curbside appeal is number one. Tree
Mm-hmm.
trimming,
Mm-hmm.
landscaping, number one. Number two, what we're going to do is re-steel, repave, and restripe the parkway, right? Because
Mm,
that's one of those immediate things. Like you
it
drive
sure
in,
is. That's a
you
big
see this,
pop.
and it's a big pop, right? Then what we're going to do is rebrand it. So obviously you get all that. We get
Yeah, I'm not such a fan of that Weatherly Walk name
same.
myself, or the fonts they use. So I'm looking forward to the rebranding.
Do you want to call it Park at Bellevue? 'Cause that's another name whose
That's
name.
that's an inside joke between me and Omar.
So that's
No
another.
Bellevues.
Yeah, that's another name that Anna hates. So
Who wants to live
basically,
in Bellevue? No one. No one wants to live in a crazy house. Yeah, no,
yeah,
no Bellevues.
yeah. So that rebranding is very important. And coincidentally with that, again, because you've got to realize all of these things go hand in hand. If you can't just do one and don't not do the other. So, put in
Yes.
exterior paints, really funky, nice, cool colors, and then basically draw it out by adding an Amazon locker. If you look at one of the comps, it's called Renew at Peachtree City. They put
Okay.
not only a fantastic Amazon locker, what they did is they took their color scheme and they did the same color scheme on their Amazon locker. It looks really nice, actually. Right,
Nice.
so it looks very coherent, right? So the first thing is, as soon as you come in, it pops, number one, right off the bat, right? Then you see all these amenities like bocce ball court, cornhole, gaga ball. By the way, there's a game called gaga ball. I did not
Oh
even
my
know about
goodness,
it.
I have to learn that.
No, it's basically dodgeball, but you're in a really small enclosed area,
Oh,
which
okay.
I think is like asking for a concussion, but whatever. Apparently, people play that and they like it. So doing a lot of that, and then so imagine now as you're entering the apartments, what you're now looking at is a more open floor layout plan. You're looking at faux stainless steel or stainless steel appliances, depending
Okay.
on the unit type. What you're looking at is a kitchen backsplash, a lighting package, an open floor layout with vinyl plank, basically, and just a lot of natural light coming in.
And changing the color scheme, because their
Oh
current
yeah, yeah,
color
yeah.
scheme within the units is like the beiges and browns, which is,
It's very.
these days it's really the neutral
Yeah.
grays and off whites and creams, a little bit of browns in there too. So Omar, what are you seeing as the cost for interior renovations to achieve these rent bumps?
So roughly it's about $5,100 for about these units. We're doing roughly about 70% of the units. If it's
Okay.
$5,100, that roughly amounts to about $700,000 in total.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to leave some meat on the bone for the next guy.
Of course.
We're only looking at moving this up to 70%. And the units are honestly in good shape otherwise, right? Now, are
Oh
we going
yeah,
to be
yeah, yeah.
knocking down walls? You mentioned open layout. does that require us to knock down walls? Because that gets expensive.
No, in certain cases, but yeah, not entire walls. You've got to realize, like a lot of times in the older times, by older I mean 80s, it's not really that old. What happens is the kitchen, for instance, is a completely separate, like
Correct.
enclosed
Yep. We
area to
see that a
like the.
lot.
So you're not knocking down the entire wall. What you're really doing is knocking down a portion of the wall,
Okay. So we're
or
just going to be
putting,
opening up the kitchens to the main living area
yeah,
is kind of the extent of it.
or putting like a little alcove, right, where you knock out, you retain the entire wall, but in between you carve
Okay.
out a little rectangle,
Okay.
right?
And where did this number, this budget number come from, 5,100? Is that something you just used from a previous property, or how did you come up with that number?
Previous property, personal experience, and the fact that we had two contractors on site.
Excellent. Okay, great.
I mean, it's a
Let's
combination of things, right?
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, having two contractors that actually came to the site and helped you with your due diligence is obviously extremely useful because you want the current market data from people that are living it and doing it.
Yeah,
So
and look, the previous experience also kind of helps because you have to realize, again, depending on the contractor time, some would really underbid it, some would really overbid it, and you kind of have to look at their scope of work and then kind of mix and match to really figure out, okay, this is what I really want,
right.
right?
Let's look at the returns. I mean, let's let people know what are we looking at for returns on this project for our investors.
I thought you'd never ask. The returns on these projects are very healthy for a property, especially Class B property. I've highlighted this in green in case people don't say, let me bold it. There you go. Basically, the LP, and by the time all the returns I'm providing here, these are net of all fees. Okay, so there's
Okay,
no gotcha thing over here where I tell you one thing and something else is happening. The LP
great.
equity multiple is 1.9x, right? So for every dollar you put in, at the end of 5 years, you're going to get $1.9 back.
Okay, and that includes your original dollar.
Yeah. That includes your
Okay,
original dollar, right? Then the average annual returns, or the AAR, sorry, over here is 18%. The IRR, the LPR, the ones going to investors, is 15.6%. And the average cash on cash is 8.5%, which is very healthy, by the way, just to let you know, compared
yeah,
to,
especially for a Class B property that's an
yeah,
easy
this,
property like this. Very
yeah,
stable, steady Eddie.
steady. And look, at the end of the day, just do rough math. 33% is roughly considered the affordability index, right? So let's assume we go, $1,000 right now in income, right? So 1,000 times 12 is 12,000 divided by, say, 70,000, right? It's a little over 70,000, but let's say 70,000. That puts you at 17% affordability, right? Now let's assume we go 1181, which is really the renovated rent over here, right? And we go I have a calculator, maybe you don't see it.
No, we don't see it. We just hear you pounding.
You just go 1181 or 1,181 average rent multiplied by 12 months, which is the amount of months in the year. That's 14,172 divided by the same 70,000. And now you're at 20% off your gross income, right? So you're still far below, you're like a third below what is the accepted average for affordability for housing.
Okay, got it. What's our splits on this project, and is there a pref? I'm sure that we've conveyed this information elsewhere to our investors, but since we're talking about returns,
Yeah, so the preferred return is 8%,
uh-huh,
and there's a 70-30 split on top.
perfect. Let's talk about assumptions, and I think when we talk about assumptions, we'll also get down to talking about exit cap rates as well. So what are your assumptions related to things like rent growth, income growth, expenses, all those types of things?
Sure, cool. So I'll tell you, rent growth, basically, if you look over here, it goes, and I'll give you the rationale behind it. I just want to give you the numbers first. 4% year one, 3.5% year two, 3.5% year three, 2.5, and 2%. Now, this market has been growing on an average of, I think, 4.8% from 2010 onwards. In the last year, it grew 10%.
Jeez.
And no, and to be honest with you, yeah, look, to be honest with you, yeah, these are all the same emotions I had when I was going through this and looking at the numbers. But there's a reason for that. And the reason is what we talked at the start. It's a supply constrained market. It's an affluent submarket. Lots of rich people and high income earners live here. There's not a lot of supply here. So
Yeah, not a lot of apartments, right? It's
yeah,
it's mostly homeowners and versus rentals.
yeah. I mean, they've got I think what it would be, A grade school
Hmm.
system over here. So, people want to move here. So no wonder rents are going up. Or
Yeah,
rather, the percentage is very high. And the reason for that is very simple. The reason is people want to live here. And there's a lot of demand, not a lot of supply. So when that happens, either people pay more or they move out and somebody else comes in.
that's right.
Right? I mean, that's honestly, that's the long and short answer.
Yeah.
Right? So with regards to basically our assumptions, annual assumptions, we are, say, averaging about 14.6% economic vacancy in year one, which is
Okay.
which is higher than average, right? Higher than the T12 average, T3 average. And the
What's
reason
your T3 average right now for economic? Do you remember?
I don't remember it at the top of my head, but it was something
Okay.
like 12.8 to 13.6%,
Yeah, because this is a
somewhere in
very
there.
stabilized property. So, okay,
Yeah,
so we're a couple of points
higher.
above the T3 economic of the current owner. So
Yeah.
that's always a good thing. So we're coming in at 14 economic. Okay,
Yes.
for year
And
one.
look, and the reason for that, and your audience probably knows all of this, the reason for that is very simple. Look, when you're going through a value add process, the whole point of going through a value add process is that there's going to be tenants who you will have to either not renew their lease or evict or some version of that. And when that unit becomes available, all you're really doing is you're just rapidly going into that unit and just renovating everything and leasing it back up.
That's
So
right.
there's always going to be a little gap where you're out for 1.5 month as you're renovating the units. But what happens over a period of time is that basically you're able to, drive down your vacancy, because now when you have a better community and you improve the tenant profile even more, people want to live there longer. But just to add to that, on the vacancy, by the way, Neil tried to stump me on this. So I think you were on the call as well. And the issue was the vacancy in this market is something like 3 or 4%.
Yeah.
Remember when Neil said, "Oh, I think it looks higher"? I was like, "No, no, no. Look at all these cluster of properties. They're all in Fayetteville, and they're all between 2.5 to 4%,
Right.
right?" So we're accounting for the fact that, for instance, in the first year, I might be running a higher vacancy just because I am doing the value add.
Hmm.
And even once I stabilize, which is about 18 months or so, we're still running it higher than in-place comps right now. So
Yes.
just you add more cushion, because the issue is, nobody had problems with more money, but people always have problems if they get less money. So that's why, we pad our numbers, we cushion them up. It looks pretty nice. And when we do a fantastic job, the next time we email you, you give us all your money.
So tell me about the bad debt. Now I know you keep saying this is a good area, but what's the current bad debt on the property, and tell me about your modeling for bad debt.
So it's the current bad debt is 2.2%, which
Mm.
is, I mean, I don't know, maybe you live in a penthouse in San Francisco, Anna, but that is actually way lower
It is lower. That's
down
definitely
here.
well within reason. You really start worrying when you're over 4% and higher is where you really get concerned on when you're underwriting properties. So 2.2 for 194 units especially in Atlanta metro is very low.
Oh yeah, and just the readers don't know this, but Anna lives in a really swanky place in San Francisco, so she does not even know about bad debt. She only knows about income and assets and that sort of stuff. She has no idea about debt or bad or any of those kind of words.
my my
So
funny
that's why.
friend.
Yes. No, it's not funny. I mean, you do live in a pretty nice place.
So let's talk about the exit cap rate.
Yeah. So the exit cap rate is a very healthy 75 basis points on top of the going in cap rate.
So what
And
does that mean? 75 basis points. Break that down for us, brother.
okay, so 75 to what? 50?
Well, over 5 years, you're saying that you're giving a spread of 75. So over the whole of the project.
Yes.
Okay.
So what this look, essentially the reason why you're doing this is nobody has a crystal ball, right? So because we don't have a crystal ball, we always assume that the future is going to be worse than the present.
Mhm.
Right? Because we want to account for that possibility that in case the future is worse than the present, we have already accounted for that. So having a cap rate spread or an expansion of the cap rate, all this basically says is that, look, I am going in with the assumption that when it comes time for me to sell in the future at a time of my choosing, market conditions are going to be considerably worse
We
than me
always think
going
that.
in right now.
Yes.
Now, the thing what happens is if you account for that and a bad thing doesn't happen, you know what happens? All the returns that we promised over here they shoot up dramatically.
Absolutely.
So to give you an idea, let's assume I said 75 basis points higher, right? But let's assume things aren't as worse, right? Things are
Yeah.
doing pretty okay. And let's assume, I mean, they're a little bad, but they're not as bad as I thought it was, right? So let's assume I take it down to 50 as an example. We're just doing an exercise here, right? Now, I just want to emphasize this is.
You flip back to 75 before you switch.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna do one thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you a magic trick now, right? The magic trick is you see our numbers are 1.9,
Mm-hmm.
18%, 15.6%, and 8.5. I want you
Right.
guys to write it down. 1.9,
Oh, can't you just
18%.
copy it and paste it next so we
Oh
don't have?
yeah.
Come
You're
on, come on.
really
Don't make
trying
us
to,
work so hard.
you're really trying to make me do the work now. Hold on. Here you go. So
Thank
it is
you.
like original case. That's why you get paid the big bucks, Anna. Okay, so original case. Now let's
There you go.
assume things are bad, but they're not as bad as I thought they were. Right? They're 50 basis points. You see this? It goes from 1.9x to 2.05 equity multiple.
Nice.
It goes from 18 to 21.1% average annual returns. Shoots up from 15.6 to 7.6, 17.6 IRR. The cash on cash is going to stay the same because the cash on cash does not take into account exit.
It doesn't get impacted by exit cap rate. Exactly.
So the point, as we talked about earlier, is it's always better to assume the worst and it doesn't happen than to assume the best and the worst happens.
And what is your going in cap rate for this? What are we buying at?
And this is at 4.8% on a T12 basis.
Okay, 4.8% on the T12 basis. And what is I'm sure you've been digging into the Atlanta market. What is the cap rate for Class B assets of this size?
Class B assets of this size is anywhere between 4.6 to 4.9%.
Okay, so we're right on the upper part of that. So we're not buying under the cap rate, which is nice. Sometimes that happens with a value add, right? You might be coming in a couple ticks below what the market cap rate is because of how much value is to be had. But in this case, we're right in the ballpark.
Yeah. And look, to be honest with you, it's a shameless plug now. I've actually written a very semi-notorious / famous blog post on this thing, where, to be honest with you, the cap rate, just to give you an idea, doesn't even apply to value add properties. The cap rate is a measure of stabilized properties.
Exactly. I completely agree with you, Omar. You and I are totally on the same page there.
But so, when people want to talk about this, I just say, look, I get it. That's why I'm showing you this. But just realize this doesn't really mean anything.
It's not a realistic evaluation, correct? So let's look at the pro forma and see how the numbers look over the years.
Let me actually make it look bigger and nicer.
And normal. Thank you.
Yeah. So now you can see, do you want to see the percentages and per unit as well, or should I take that down?
That's cool. No, I like that. I like seeing percentages. I'm all about percentages.
Cool. So as you can see here, basically the property right now is running at roughly about 41%. Let me see, 950, 161, 45%. 950 divided by 2100888. Yeah, there you go. The property is running at 45% because operating expense ratio, because practically they haven't even done anything and they're still running so lean. Now that is a factor of two things. That is a factor of the fact that this is a very high quality property. So that's why they can run lean. And the other factor is the higher in class you go on a property, like, typically class B, class A, your operating structure goes down. The reason why your OPEX expense ratio goes down, honestly, the only reason why it goes down is because it just costs less to maintain and run the property.
Yeah.
That's why it goes down.
Makes sense.
Right? So in this particular case, what's happening is in the first year, we see a big pop, 49.8%. Then we bring it down to around like a percentage point lower than what it was running at the T12 number. And that's how we slowly bring it down. Now, the reason why this slowly marginally goes down is because the rate of increase on your rents is higher than the rate of increase on your expenses. Expenses are more stabilized. Rent increases, you have a lot more leeway, especially when we implement plans like mega marketing and mega leasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So have I given you all my secrets now?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think there's maybe on your CapEx tab, do you kind of have the breakdown of your CapEx plan, or?
No, for this we don't, because I have a separate thing running with my GC. But what we
Okay.
can do is we can provide those details to whoever we
I
want.
think they'll be in the investment summary
It
anyway.
will be.
So
It is
I was just
actually.
trying to pick through your tabs down there and see. So yeah, I think that's about it. And I love that it's a all utilities are being individually metered. I think it's awesome. This is a great find, Omar and team for finding this deal, a jewel in the rough, and all that amidst out in the sea.
Yeah.
So it's been a long, hard road pulling in a value add. We've been working extra hard, so we're really proud of getting this one under contract, and super excited to be implementing another project with Omar.
Oh, yeah. And I'm very excited to be doing this. It's going to be a fantastic investment.
All right, everybody, if you have any other questions, you can email us. Other than that, we'll wrap this one up.
Thank you so much. Have a good one,
Thank
guys.
you.